Welcome to MoonLore. We're here today to talk about the Pisces full moon that happens on September 20th at 7:55 p.m. The full moon is at 28 degrees Pisces. Do I have that all right, Jenny?
Yeah, you got it, Laurie.
All right, so this is the full moon, and when we're looking at the full moon, this is the culmination of several cycles. If you look at just the monthly cycle, the 28-day cycle of the moon moving around the zodiac, we are looking back at the new moon that happened in Virgo on September 6th. So 2 weeks ago was the new moon. Now's the culmination of that at the full moon. The other longer cycle that we're looking at, this brings to culmination that larger cycle that began in March 13th. And that would have been the new moon in Pisces. Yes.
You got it. That's all. Sounds good.
We got that. Okay. So how do you think about, if we think about the cycles, the lunar cycles, and compare that to the plant cycle, can you explain that to those that are listening that are really new at this?
Sure. So we're at the full moon phase. That's what we're going to talk about today. So the full moon is like the flower. So let me back up and start with explain it a little more. At the new moon, we plant a seed, and you're planting that seed nicely into the soil. At the first quarter square, it's grown a lot. It's bust out through the soil. It's now a pretty tall, leafy plant. When you get to the full moon, which is where we're at a week later, that's when we're seeing the flower. So that's what we're going to talk about today, like what has come to light. And then after that, the flower goes away. It turns into fruit. You harvest the fruit from the vine at the last quarter square. And then the very last week is all about just letting everything go back to compost and kind of return to a state of oneness. And that's how you get your nutrients in the soil for the next cycle. And on we go.
Awesome. So each one of these quarters is a week long. As far as the short cycle goes.
Yeah.
Okay. And each one of these quarters in the larger cycle would be 3 months?
Yeah. Because it's really a year long when you think about it, because we're just at the culminating. Right. So
exactly. Okay, so that kind of covers the cycle piece. And now, because this is a full moon in Pisces, let's talk about Pisces.
Yeah, let's talk about Pisces.
Let's talk about Pisces. Yeah. What do we know about Pisces? What do you think about with Pisces?
Well, Pisces is reminiscent of the ocean. So we're just thinking about a big, mysterious body of water in which all kinds of different processes happen, some of which you can see and some of which you cannot. So there's a mysteriousness to Pisces. There's this, it really has a very mystical part to it. It also has a sense of sacrifice with it. That's something we talk a lot about with Pisces. Those are a couple of the things.
Yeah, Pisces is a water sign. It's the mutable water sign. I think of, the connection that Pisces has to what is unseen, what's kind of, hidden from view. I think a lot about suffering with Pisces. And the fact that suffering, even, when we individually are in a state of suffering, it's really not our own. It's part of the collective human suffering. And I think, there's a lot of that with Pisces, is just the collective, the oneness, the whole that you mentioned. I think it's important to think about that with Pisces. Pisces, I also always think of Pisces as, it's so hard to grasp hold of it. You think about the two fishes going in opposite direction. Just try to grab hold of those little slippery things. And, Pisces can be pretty slippery. You don't really know what's going on under the surface.
Yeah, that's definitely, as a water sign, the boundaries are always going to be a question. You think about the ocean, it just fills up the spaces that it fills up. It's like that, and then it's at sea level. I mean, it doesn't have its own boundaries. So those are things we're going to question with a lot of Pisces emphasis. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So do you want to share the chart? Are we ready to do that?
Let's do it. Okay. So here we have our Pisces full moon, September 20th, and 7:55 Eastern time, because we're on the East Coast of the US where we're doing this.
Okay. And there is the opposition. The full moon is always when the sun and moon are in opposite signs. That's why we sitting in the middle at the, this chart is from our perspective. So we're sitting here in the middle. And the reason we can see that big, full expanse of the face of the moon is because the sun is in the opposite position reflecting on it.
Yeah, and this is an interesting, I was noticing it's at 28 degrees. Yeah. And that brings in a couple things. 28 degrees means it's at what's called the Aries point in some schools of astrological thought. And it's just a point that shows up a little more prominently. And I put that together with the fact that this moon's going to rise. It's going to be just not that long after the sun's gone down. So it's really going to illuminate the night right away. So those two things just kind of brings in this idea of visibility to this full moon, of what is really going to be showing up loud and clear. And what is going to be showing up loud and clear.
And well, the other thing that I want to mention, what made me think of it when you mentioned the late degree, I mean, we are very close. If you look at the sun at that 28 degrees of Virgo, we are just 2 days from the equinox. So this is very much, right at the turning of the clock, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I do think that this full moon is bringing in this idea of, we're switching over into a new phase of this year. And we are, obviously, by what you just said, we're at the equinox, but I think in other ways, astrologically, there's a it's going to be a really interesting autumn. There's a lot of more angular aspects that we're seeing coming up in the autumn. So I do think it is speaking to that. The other thing that you can't help but notice in this chart is that the sun is conjunct Mars. It is across the sign line, but it's still within a 5-degree conjunction of the sun, and that the moon is conjunct Neptune. So what you have is a very masculine sun Mars, which is very boisterous and, I'm going to be big and bold and loud. And then you have the moon in Pisces right up against even more mysterious Neptune. So it's a very yin yang type of chart we're looking at here.
Yeah. Also rather passive aggressive. When you bring Mars and Neptune together, it's really interesting, because that does, Neptune being conjunct the moon and Mars being conjunct the sun in that opposition. There's like this standoff of, I think when Mars and Neptune get together in a certain way, it can seem kind of charismatic, but it's kind of a false front. There's something passive aggressive in that, something unclear, obviously, that lack of clarity. Unclear actions would be something here. And I think that at this full moon, we all might want to be aware of that. How, don't be in too much of a hurry to take an action, because the clarity, the information you need might not be there.
Yeah. Well, I like how you're saying that. It's also making me think a little bit of also the idea that the sun and Mars together are like, hey, we're going to get together, we're going to take an action, we're going to do this thing. But with the moon and Neptune over there, I think that's saying, well, don't get attached to the outcome. Don't think that just because you take an action means that you know the effects. So it does lead to carefully consider what you are taking action on, and don't be tied to the outcome. Just, be present with the action you take.
And that leads me to my other thought that I was thinking of with the moon, with Mars and Neptune, is a burst bubble. It's like,
Yeah.
You might think
Yeah.
your action is all big and important, but are your boundaries set? Do you know really what it is you're trying to accomplish here? Yeah.
Yeah.
This sounds like it's going in a negative direction.
Well, no, I was going to say, no, I think that's actually a great springboard, because I was going to say, well, what is a good use of this? Well, a good use of this setup is when you take that action and you decide that it's not just for you, it's to better other things. Because you've got that Virgo piece with the sun, and Virgo's like, hey, let's help people out. Let's help out my neighbors. We talk a lot about, let's go to the soup kitchen and help serve the food. I mean, those are the things. So if you do those things, then you're honoring the more Piscean side too, of trying to alleviate suffering for all. So that's the
taking
that's
the
word.
action with compassion in mind. Exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
If you don't have your boundaries clear, or be clear about your level of, and this also, we've got this is service, and on that side with the Virgo, this is service. So if you're doing a service with the collective in mind, you can take the action. If that action is somehow for selfish gain, you're going to have that burst bubble, and
yeah. And I think what you can start to add to this picture of our full moon is you can add the fact that the sun is trining Pluto. That's the other really blatant aspect in here, and moon sextiles Pluto. So that just adds a big element of empowerment, of sort of saying, hey, what action you take does matter. It matters, and it's going to have an impact. So refer back to who are you taking the action for, and just considering that carefully.
Right. Yeah. Huh. That's lovely. I like that.
Yeah.
And what else?
There's a bunch of stuff. But
let's think about, just very simply, I often talk when we get to the full moon about the path that the moon has taken since the new moon. And I know, in looking at this, the way the chart is for this full moon, the moon has passed through all of the planets except, well, Chiron and Uranus. It's gone past Mars, Mercury, Venus, the South Node, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, and Neptune. So it's gone all the way through. It's gathered up all of the energy except Uranus. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what that feels like. The last thing that it gathered up is Neptune. So that's the one that is the most prominent in its conversation.
Yeah. I was just thinking, because it ends in Pisces right next to Neptune, it gathers up all this stuff, it carefully gathers it up, and then it all dissolves. And when it arrives, it's got nothing in its hands, because it all just got dissolved into the ocean of oneness.
Right.
There's a little bit of that.
I like that idea. And then, the thing to think about too here is, very soon after this new moon, the moon's going into Aries, and the conversation's going to change very quickly. This new moon is not one that's going to linger in this space of Pisces driftiness. It's going to very quickly go into Aries, where the conversation is going to change dramatically.
Yeah.
I would expect, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think at that 28 degrees, I don't think it's making any other aspects. So the moon goes void as soon as this. Yeah, it must be void after that. So, any actions you're going to take in the day, do it before the full moon. The other thing, and I was listening to another astrologer, and I really liked, she was talking about how, Mars has just gone over the sun. So the sun is holding all that energy that Mars left it with. But very recently, and Mars is also trining that Pluto. Very recently, Mercury was in that position with the sun. And before that, Venus was in that position with the sun. And they all, if you think about the values, desire, and then the thought process, the planning, and then Mars coming in with, okay, action. And I think, once that moon goes into Aries, then it's going to exactly oppose that Mars. And that's where the action point is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's an
Yeah.
action point here after the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, people talk about the full moon as though, you know, it's full for that moment, and then it's, who knows, nothing. But the full moon phase lasts for quite a while. You know, it doesn't disappear as soon as that moment is over. And that's why, you know, with all of any rituals people do for the new moon or the full moon, it's better to do it on the other side of the exact moment, because that's when the energy is really strong. Right beforehand, you're missing the point.
Mm-hmm.
So afterwards, and I would say, you know, if you're thinking of some action being taken, wait until the moon opposes Mars shortly after that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, one thing I think that has been interesting about a lot of our lunations lately too, kind of to add on to that action idea, is just that there's continues to be this emphasis on air signs, and air signs speak about relating and the need to have a conversation, the need to relate and connect, and you know, sort of be more inclusive and it's conceptual as well. So there's just continues to be an emphasis on the conversation, the discussion between people. And in this chart, you've got Mercury and Mars are both in Libra. And both of those lead you to Venus, because Venus rules Libra. So this kind of this effect of how Mars and Mercury and Venus are working together, which is exactly what you're talking about, the desires, the communication, and then the action. And it's kind of funny because Venus and Mars are in each other's signs in this chart.
Neither Venus or Mars are very happy where they are.
Yeah, they're both like, ugh, and they're having they're in mutual reception. So Mars is in Venus's sign of Libra, and Venus is in Mars's sign of Scorpio. So what this is forcing them to do is they're both uncomfortable, and it means that they have to kind of look to each other to get the resources. So Venus has to be more, speak up more, or step up more, I should say, and Mars has to kind of soften and chill out a little bit. And that's what they're kind of, you know, but they don't want to.
They don't want to. They really don't. They want to have, you know, they want to be in each other's places.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a sort of a envy state, each one of them. Yeah,
that's a good way to put it.
You moved into my house and I moved into yours, and I'm not happy in yours and you're not happy in mine. And yeah, I'm pissed off because I can't get out of it.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Mercury is kind of navigating the distance between the two.
Yeah, it's pretty close to smack in the middle. I mean, it's roughly 20 degrees away from both. Yeah. So it's, but yeah, so what this is doing is this underscoring that original topic we talked about of the yin and yang, this like back and forth between action and reception, or, you know, am I going to be introverted and doing my own thing, or am I going to be loud and proud and out there with everybody? You know, so it's kind of this theme, this yin yang theme that just kind of echoes throughout this chart in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Huh. Yeah. Interesting indeed. Okay, so do you want to, is there anything else you want to say about this, or you want to wrap it up from here?
No, I think we've hit the highlights pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. So I invite all of you to join us in 2 weeks for the new moon video. With that one, we will be doing a little piece on each sign and where that new moon falls. And you can find Jennie at hiddenpathastrology.com. You can find me at astrolore.org. And thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Have
Thanks,
a great
Laurie.
night, everyone.